Keir Starmer should resign in utter disgrace. New evidence today shows the Prime Minister...
Because there's this previously unseen photograph showing the former Prince Andrew, Lord Mandelson and the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein all together. It's just sort of emerged overnight.
Keir Starmer should absolutely resign. If this was just one mistake, I would say it would probably still be a resignation issue. But we know it's been mistake after mistake after mistake. Keir Starmer has lost the trust and confidence of the British public, and it's very clear it's time for...
A first-class scandal. The photograph that could change everything. There are moments in politics when a single image does more damage than 1,000 words ever could. And right now, somewhere between the corridors of power and the drawing rooms of the wealthy, a photograph has surfaced that is making very uncomfortable viewing for some very powerful people. Welcome to British Coffers, the channel that follows the money, tracks the power, and asks the questions that polite society would rather you did not. If you are new here, subscribe now because this is exactly the kind of story we exist to tell. Let us set the scene. Martha's Vineyard. Sometime between 1999 and 2000. 3 men seated around a wooden table on a deck, each holding a mug decorated with the American flag, each dressed in a bathrobe. A relaxed setting. A casual morning, perhaps. Nothing to see here. Except that those 3 men are Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Lord Peter Mandelson, and Jeffrey Epstein. A prince of the realm, one of Britain's most influential political operators, and a convicted paedophile sex trafficker. Together. In the same frame. For the first time ever photographed. This is not rumor. This is not tabloid speculation. This is documented evidence, now part of what is being called the Epstein Files, a release of more than 3 million documents, over 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images, dropped on the 30th of January. And weeks after that initial release, revelations are still surfacing. The sheer volume of the material means investigators, journalists, and members of the public are still working through it. Which means this story is nowhere near finished. Now, before anyone reaches for the usual defenses, let us be precise about what is being claimed and what is not. Being photographed with a criminal does not make you a criminal. Association is not guilt. These are important principles. But here is what makes this particular photograph so politically significant. It is not the first time either of these men has been connected to Epstein, and the details emerging from those 3 million documents go considerably further than a morning bathrobe and a cup of tea. Let us start with Lord Mandelson. Long regarded as one of the architects of New Labour, a man who twice resigned from cabinet, was sent to Brussels, came back, and remained one of the most formidable political minds in the country, Mandelson is not someone who stumbles into associations by accident. He is, by every account, meticulous, deliberate, strategic. So when a picture emerges of him in a bathrobe at Epstein's property, it demands context. And the context is not flattering. This image bears a striking resemblance to a photograph previously published in what has been described as Epstein's birthday book, which also appeared to show Mandelson dressed in a bathrobe alongside the convicted sex trafficker. Within that same book, the former UK ambassador to the United States allegedly wrote a letter to Epstein describing him as his best pal. His best pal. Not an acquaintance. Not a contact. A best pal. These are not the words of someone who bumped into Epstein at a conference. These are the words of someone who considered him a friend. If you are finding this as revelatory as we do at British Coffers, now would be an excellent time to subscribe. We cover stories like this every single week, stories that connect the dots between power, money, and accountability. Hit subscribe and stay in the loop. Now let us turn to the rather more complicated case of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The former Duke of York's relationship with Epstein has been a running wound on the British establishment for years. His catastrophic BBC Newsnight interview in 2019, where he notoriously claimed a medical condition prevented him from sweating and cited a Pizza Express visit as an alibi, was widely regarded as one of the most disastrous television appearances by a senior royal in living memory. He stepped back from public duties. He settled a civil case with Virginia Giuffre, who accused him of sexual assault, a claim he has consistently denied. And the royal family, with considerable effort, attempted to draw a line under the matter. The Epstein Files suggest that line is considerably harder to draw than the palace might prefer. Andrew's name appears at least several hundred times throughout the released documents. Several hundred. That is not a peripheral connection. That is a central thread. Among the most damaging revelations is the suggestion that Andrew's team allegedly sought assistance from Epstein in preparing for the sexual assault allegations made by Virginia Giuffre. Let that settle for a moment. The allegation is not merely that Andrew knew Epstein. It is that when the accusations surfaced, his team turned to the very man at the center of it all for help navigating them. This despite Andrew having publicly claimed he cut contact with Epstein more than 4 years before those alleged communications took place. Then there are the emails. Correspondence spanning from 2010 to 2018, years after Epstein had already been convicted and served time for soliciting prostitution from a minor in Florida, appears to suggest Andrew was pursuing a business partnership with the man. Andrew was serving as the United Kingdom's trade envoy during this period, a royal representative of British commercial interests abroad. And the suggestion is that during this time, he was in business discussions with a registered sex offender. The correspondence also apparently contained an invitation for Epstein to dine at Buckingham Palace. At Buckingham Palace. This is not ancient history. This is not a youthful indiscretion. These are alleged communications spanning nearly a decade, some of which postdate Epstein's criminal conviction. Andrew has consistently denied any wrongdoing. That remains his position. But denials, however consistent, do not erase documents. They do not unsend emails. And they do not explain away photographs. There is something worth pausing on here, which is the nature of British political culture and how it historically handles these situations. There is a tradition in this country, long and deeply embedded, of managing scandal through understatement, of allowing the establishment to quietly absorb embarrassment and emerge, a few years later, largely intact. The hope, usually, is that the public grows tired, that the news cycle moves on, that there is enough procedural fog to obscure the clearest facts. What makes the Epstein files different is the scale. 3 million documents is not a fog. It is a searchlight. And it is still being searched. Journalists are still reading. Investigators are still cross-referencing. New photographs, new emails, new details are still emerging weeks after the initial release. The story is not compressing itself into a manageable narrative. It is expanding. The broader political implications for Britain are significant. Lord Mandelson, it should be noted, is not merely a figure of historical interest. He was recently appointed as British ambassador to the United States, a posting of extraordinary importance given the current state of transatlantic relations. The idea that the man representing British interests in Washington has his own complex history with Epstein's network is precisely the kind of detail that does not stay quiet forever. Political opponents have already begun asking questions. Those questions will grow louder. And for the monarchy, the timing could hardly be worse. The institution is navigating a period of considerable scrutiny. The late Queen provided a stabilizing continuity for decades. That continuity is gone. And the persistent thread of the Andrew story, which the palace clearly hoped had been finally buried with the Jewfrey settlement, continues to unspool. Every new revelation is another reminder that the settlement resolved a civil case, not the court of public opinion. There is also the matter of accountability. In America, the release of the Epstein files is being discussed in the context of a broader political reckoning. In Britain, the conversation has been notably more muted, more restrained, more, shall we say, polite. British coffers believes that restraint is worth examining when the documents implicate figures of this seniority. In a political culture already battered by years of broken trust, the appropriate response is not discretion. It is scrutiny. Because here is the question that all of this ultimately points toward. What did these men know? When did they know it? And what did they do with that knowledge? Epstein was not a mystery. By the late 1990s, there were already whispers. By 2005, there was an active investigation in Palm Beach. By 2008, there was a conviction. And yet the associations continued. The emails continued. The invitations continued. Either those involved did not know the nature of what they were connected to, or they did know, and chose proximity anyway. Neither answer is comfortable. The photograph at Martha's Vineyard will not resolve these questions. Photographs rarely do. But it has a weight to it, the kind of weight that comes when something long suspected is suddenly visible. 3 men in bathrobes. 3 mugs with American flags. A wooden table on a deck. Somewhere between 1999 and 2000. Before the conviction. Before the headlines. Before any of them could claim they had no idea what kind of man Jeffrey Epstein was. There's more to come on this. There will be more documents. More details. More questions for more powerful people. British coffers will be here for all of it. Subscribe if you have not already. This channel exists precisely for moments like this, when power intersects with accountability and someone needs to keep watching. Share this with anyone who thinks British politics is too polite to carry stories this significant. Leave a comment below. Tell us what you think is being buried. Tell us what questions you want answered. We will be back. And so, it seems, will this story.